So we're talking today about partnerships on Flow and sharing some insights into what we're hearing from the music industry. And so just by way of introduction, for those who are joining who have not joined us in the past, this is part of a series to talk about specific verticals. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about sports. Now we're speaking about music. And I'm talking to you because I lead IP partnerships for Dapper Labs. And so that means I have a lot of people who come in and ask us and ask me what they can do, how they can build in this space. Many of them don't want to build. They are looking for building partners who will be able to host their content or license their IP. And so I'm talking to you because I've had a lot of these conversations and I continue to have a lot of these conversations. And so I was responsible for the contract we did with the NBA. I come from the sports world, but a fun fact is my first internship in college was in college radio promotion. And so I actually thought for quite a while that I would go into the music industry before I entered sports. I'm non-technical, so if you ask technical questions, I'm going to deflect. So we hold on to those and maybe pop into the Flow Discord if you want to talk to our engineers who are going to do a much better job of answering those than I will. And just to kind of put a framework around this, what we're really talking about today is ways that you can help create value for consumers by building in the blockchain space. And so we're having this conversation because we're seeing a massive amount of inbound interest. We are not going to build everything. We're not going to build nearly everything. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting the ecosystem and we're helping builders in the Flow ecosystem get connected with the kind of brands that can make their technology projects successful. But also because we want people to be really considerate about the way they're entering the space. We're hoping that, the creative assets in blockchain get better and better, and that people are really creating projects that are going to create value for consumers, and that they're responsible in their approach. So we talk about partnerships in a few different buckets. Sports is a major bucket. And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's probably somewhere that you can go and take a look at that presentation if you're interested in the sports vertical. We look at entertainment as well as another vertical. And then there's kind of personality driven activations. And so the one that we're talking about today is entertainment, which is focused on music. We also have lots of conversations with people who own intellectual property rights that are outside of music, that would be in other areas of entertainment like theatrical productions, television and movies. I mean by that, science fiction, all sorts of different areas that could be really fruitful to create products. And they're really, a lot of them are looking for builders like you to come to them with a kind of platform that can make their IP successful in this space. So what we're hearing from music rights holders, and this could be, anyone from, the team that represents Eminem to, a major record label that represents hundreds of artists, and they're looking for a solution across all of their artists, to a specific artist that has an idea of how to do something interesting in the blockchain space. Many of them, if not all of them, want to do drops. The ones that are thinking about it in the best ways also want longer term engagement. So they're thinking about it less about a one-time activation and more about something that would be part of their overall plan for the year. And if you think about a recording artist, they may have a touring schedule, which would be kind of when they are going and performing in front of their fans. They may have a merchandise schedule where, they're dropping different merch along the way on the tour. They may have tent poles in their schedule in the same way that, something like NBA Top Shot has tent poles that go with the NBA calendar, like the All-Star game or the finals, or all sorts of, the draft, all sorts of different things that create inflection points within a season. And so music has that as well. And it may be, mega concerts, music festivals, It may be award show season, which is really important for a lot of recording artists. And so instead of thinking about it just as a single independent drop, I think the groups that are thinking about it in the most advanced way are thinking about it as, you know, a line of business for their artists. And it's another way for you to continue to think about how you can add value to the ecosystem and create platforms that can attract these artists. I just want to make sure everyone has themselves muted as they are participating. There's a little bit of feedback from someone. And many of them are interested in finding connections between the visual arts and musicians. In some cases, that may be recording artists who have friends who are visual artists and they want to do a collaboration. There have been kind of lots of opportunities for collaboration in the crypto art space with musicians, and we've seen some of those come to fruition. Many recording artists are visual artists, and so they have the potential to be multimedia artists. Maybe crypto is the place that they're going to do visual arts, and then recording arts are another part of their career. And so we're hearing all of these things. But at the very foundation of it, all of the people who reach out to us have recording artists who are involved, they're involved with in some way, who think that there's a huge opportunity to capture direct value and to engage directly with fans through blockchain projects. And so sometimes like the concept of drops may be, you know, something that seems like a cash grab. And I think the people who are smartest in this space are looking at it specifically not as a cash grab, but as a way to drive a new revenue stream by engaging their fans with something valuable that maintains its value for their fans. And so we have a lot of these conversations about the different things that come into the world of music. Audio is the absolute hardest to work with. So when you're kind of thinking through your own projects and thinking through what do fans love, what could we make use of that exists that artists create, audio is going to be the most difficult. The rights around audio are very, very clear. And many of them sit with streaming services. And so there isn't always a ton artists can do around, you know, releases in other ways with unique content in that respect. I'm not saying don't run down the path of audio. I mean, I think there are areas in the music industry that are certainly ripe for disruption. But when you're thinking about what is the path of least resistance, audio is the path of most resistance. The second piece is video, which has a lot more flexibility. If you think about all of the different video content that could be captured around an artist, it may be something like, you know, B-roll from a video shoot or things that didn't quite make it in. It may be, you know, great, almost highlights of concerts. Many artists kind of, you know, do great video content around some of the biggest venues in the world. So when they go and they play MSG in New York, it's a big event and they capture content around it. I think if we haven't all seen the Beyonce special around Coachella, please go watch it. It's amazing. But there's so much video content that happens, you know, out in the world with recording artists. That is an area that could be really fruitful to pursue. There's tour art, there's album art, there's all sorts of, you know, art that could be used as a framework. And we've done some explorations. We're not currently planning on building anything ourselves in the music space, but we have done some creative exploration of how do you take elements from a music video and make those like in a little bit of a cartoon way, or how do you pull some of the elements out of existing album art to make an interesting kind of thematic series of NFTs that are related to something that's important in that artist's world. So there's a huge amount of kind of interesting content that you could create outside of the official art, but inspired by official art. And then there's original art, and that is a complete greenfield. That's something that is super fun to think about. How do you create art that's inspired by musicians? How do you include recording artists in the way that you think about art? And so I only bring up these different elements to say that audio is extremely hard to deal with. And so if you're thinking about how do you get, musicians and recording artists to think about your platform, or you're thinking about building a platform around recording artists, starting with the audio is going to be really hard. And the things that we're saying back to them are that they should consider the long-term value of the assets that they release. And this goes for everyone. Most of these things are things we ask everyone to consider. Doing a bad NFT drop that doesn't retain its value really hurts fans, and it could be really hurtful to people's brands along the way. And I think we're cautioning people to think about, how does your action today, which maybe is interesting and experimental and drives some revenue, and certainly a lot of people have to make hay while the sun shines, how do you protect your fans' value, and how do you make sure that the things you're dropping don't get devalued along the way? And so you protect your brand identity by protecting your fans. It's really a virtuous structure there. We also talk about engagement loops. I talk about engagement loops nonstop. I think that part of, what keeps people coming back to NBA Top Shot is a lot of those engagement loops where there's a reason to come back every day. There are great, live streams that go along with drops. There are, challenges to do. There's all of these little things that, even though they seem simple in isolation, what they do is they add up into a product that people keep coming back to every single day. And I think when you think about the products that you are building or you're going to build, ask yourself, would I come back to this tomorrow? And what am I coming back to this tomorrow for? We also recommend, especially to recording artists and labels, to consider putting together a plan for a few months and to look at, what does it look like if you were to do some kind of activation for a few months. Megan, do you mind muting whoever took themselves off mute? Thanks. So think about it as not an individual drop, but think about it as a series of engagement and a way to keep people engaged over a period of time. And what that can do is to really force builders and brands to say, here's the continuous value that we're creating. Here's what we think the outcome of that will be, and go through that practical step of thinking about what things can look like in a longer term. When you look at something and you're like, this independent drop is going to be dope, it's hard to look outside of that and say, what is this going to mean to this fan a month from now? Or what is this going to mean to a fan 3 months from now? But if you force yourself to think to that 3 or 6 month mark, it becomes very clear if that asset maintains value, or if you're kind of just convincing yourself that that asset maintains value. And the other thing that we say a lot is give NFTs a chance to stand on their own. There's a real desire and knee-jerk reaction for brands, recording artists, labels, management to say, let's do we'll do the NFT, but the NFT will get you this thing in the real world, which is fun. And it's going to continue to be fun to see what NFTs can unlock. But if the NFT is not valuable on its own, then you might as well just sell access to the thing that you want to give fans access to, because building in blockchain is not easy. And it's definitely not the path of least resistance for that kind of fan engagement. And so we always encourage people to try to think about, are these assets, are these NFTs going to be valuable if you don't have that thing with them, if you don't have that, courtside seat with it, if you don't have, that piece of exclusive merch? Is there something that people are going to love about that NFT you released independent of those things? Because we truly believe that NFTs can stand on their own. They don't need to have an incentive to go and collect them. And so think about ways to give those NFTs a chance to stand on their own, or whatever that thing is, right? If you're thinking about something that's more like a fan currency, maybe that's okay. For you don't need a currency to stand on its own. People aren't collecting that currency to be a collectible. They're doing it to gain access, which is great. But just think about the thing that you're building and make sure that it can stand up on its own. And again, the stuff that needs to be built are, storefronts that are really deeply considerate of music and what music fans love. If you think about NBA Top Shot, where you would go to do drops, to come and participate in drops, that's our storefront. And that storefront has a ton of stuff going on. It's really, multifaceted. We try to navigate people to interesting content. We try to surface things that they might want to see, like what players are involved on the platform, what packs have been dropped in the past, what great marketplace transactions are happening, and surfacing those back to our homepage. But think about your storefronts as a place that music fans are going to be engaged, and think about how do you engage them over and over. I think one of the most interesting things to me about music is that I'm not going to discover the NFL because I play NBA Top Shot, right? Like the NFL is not a secret to anybody. Whereas in music, there could be like a great amount of discovery that happens where I may actually become a fan of a recording artist because I love their NFTs and I think their art is amazing. And then I go and listen to their music and I'm like, oh, wow, this music is good too. I'd never heard of them. That's something that's not going to happen for us in sports, but it's something that is going to be a reality in music and music collectibles on chain. And so think about how can you create an interesting discovery service where it's not just one artist dropping a series or one NFT, but really it's a way to learn about new music, to be immersed in culture, the culture of recording and visual arts. There's kind of like a lot of fun things that could be played with there, and we haven't seen a ton of it. And we've seen not a ton of it on Flow as well. And so I think we would love to see more of that. Again, taking that step back and saying, what is great for a fan? What is great for a fan of music? What would enrich the experience of fans of any kind of genre? Maybe it's genre specific. Maybe you kind of want to make that, cultural bubble around something a little tighter. But there's a huge amount of opportunity to do some really cool stuff there. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all build in that regard. And then the other thing that I think we'd love to see are platforms that can service major artists, but also emerging artists. And one of the things that is most fun about music is that you can, to me, music and NFTs is that you could prove that you were a fan of that artist before anybody else was. And I think almost more than any other industry, knowing about music first is so important to people who love music in any kind of genre. That kind of opportunity to say, I would love to have had the opportunity to buy an NFT, 5 years ago on a Tuesday night when I went to a Brother Tiger show in Vancouver at Fortune Sound Club that there were 15 people at, because it's a Brooklyn artist who was playing in Vancouver and nobody knew who he was. And so to be able to have that certificate of authenticity that I was there and I did that thing and I'm a true fan and I was a fan before you were a fan, I think that is some of the most fun stuff that can happen in the music space. But emerging artists have to be able to access these platforms in the same way that established artists can in order to make that a reality. And so in some cases, I think music platforms by necessity are going to have to be almost software as a service, where they're, letting artists come in and do that thing, whether, you're a major artist and you have a team of 10 who's working on your NFT strategy, or you're an emerging artist and you get tech and you do some really great work. And your fans really love it. I think coming at it from both ends is going to be really exciting. And I talked about this a little in the last one, but I'll talk about it again. Just thinking about the business models that can happen around this, this kind of platform model where you are, and the tee up to this is you all should make money on your projects. None of you are becoming, builders in order to, in most cases, service big record labels for free. And so think about the way that your businesses can be sustainable. And we're happy to help you think about that as well. There are a few different kind of models that work really well in this space. They're not the only ones, but they're ones that are kind of really kind of well defined. The first one is that platform model where anybody can come in, you kind of charge them for access, or you charge them for the sales, you take a percentage of that in some kind of fee or royalty, and either you scale with the size of the brands that come and use your platform, or you scale horizontally across many different brands. And so in that way, you can keep your fee structure low in order to service more partners. There's an agency model where you do everything. You create the art, you make everything look right. All they do is kind of bring their IP to the table, and there are fees associated with the work you do, as well as maybe a platform model to get on both ends of it. And then there's a license model, which is in many ways the riskiest, because you have to pay up front in order to license that IP. Typically, you take more revenue off of that one because you're taking more risk on, but you do have to take that risk on, which makes it a little scary. What is great about it is that if you want to build something that's maybe specific to a single artist, or you want to build something that is a bigger game or experience, it may be a good way for you to go deep with one partner rather than shallow across multiple partners. And then there's lots of ways to get involved on Flow. And so this deck will be available after this session, and these links are all clickable, but tons of information as you go forth and build. The Discord channel, again, is a really great place to get in touch with our team and our engineers as well. And I think we are ready for the Q&A portion. So I talked for a good amount of time there. I'm gonna stop talking for a minute.
Okay, great. So if you have a question that you want to ask, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't think I see anyone with their hand raised right now, but I'll give you a few seconds to raise your hand and I'll call on whoever asks first. Okay, I think we have someone. Yeah, Mikey, do you want to jump in with your question?
Yeah, hello. It seems like one of the big aspects of the Top Shot success is that it's sort of fiat first, like that it's in dollars and not in some cryptocurrency. And so I'm curious, as both an artist and a developer, kind of how you guys see, the future of that and how that plays into a successful rollout.
So we think that the credit card payments are essential because they create an entry point to any fan. So to us, it's important, and we're working through how to make sure that, either we provide the tools or partners provide tools in order for those fiat rails to be accessible to anyone who's building a project. The fiat rails are important, but we also see a large percentage of revenue come through crypto. And so I think on Top Shot, the last time I checked, which admittedly is a few weeks ago now, we were at 80% of transactions were done by credit card, but 50% of revenue came from crypto. And part of that is because, your crypto wallet doesn't give you a daily spending limit in the same way that your credit card or your bank does. And that's frankly the superpower of cryptocurrency, is that self-sovereignty to decision make in that way. So we think that you need both. We would never want to, launch products that you couldn't pay in cryptocurrency, because we think that's an important opportunity for people to make their own decisions in that way. But the credit card payments for sure open up to a more mainstream audience, and frankly, kind of level the playing field for participation. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. And I think we have Joan next.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so I was just getting into, I'm a blockchain expert myself. I've been in blockchain for about 2 years, And I'm just now like getting into this space and trying to figure out where I want to put my money and where I put my investments. Because I've been holding on to my coins for a while. Even you guys got a flow coin. I've been trying to get it. It didn't got a little high on me. It was like $9 last year, and now it's like almost $40. But I'm still trying to get a few of you guys coins, and I have a blockchain domain that is good for promoting upcoming artists and artist brands. I think blockchain domains will be important in this space because it's like a piece of property. Nobody can own music.crypto. Nobody can own music.crypto. And I based my name off of you guys, Dapper Labs, and with decentralized apps, I think music and dApps will go together to create a space for artists and NFTs.
Thank you. I don't think that was a question, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it wasn't a question, now. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Megan, I think you can move on to the next question.
Great. So the next person actually just sent over their question to me, so I will read it out loud. There's some interesting ideas and concepts around the space of audio that I feel Flow might be able to hit big with. Keeping the right issues in mind, is there someone I could reach out to in the organization to chat to about this, or are you currently hiring talent in this space?
So the purpose of this presentation is to get y'all to be building because we're not going to build everything, and I don't think it's likely that we're building around music. So I think there are certainly builders in the space that if someone has a good idea, again, that Flow Discord is a great place to throw out some ideas and see what builders are interested in them. You can email hello@dapperlabs.com and the Flow team will see some of the questions that come in. But I think from the perspective of us building a music product, the reason that I'm doing this is because we're not going to be building music products and we hope that you do. So from that regard, I would say find some ecosystem partners to be building with. If you are a group that is building and has questions around, how would a major label react to this audio idea, those kind of things we definitely can try to help with. And I think our partners in the music space are very interested in finding great builders who are doing things that make sense for them. And so why don't you just shoot us an email and give us a little more information and we'll see what path makes sense to help you in.
Okay, great. I'm going to jump to Jeffrey next. I think you had your hand raised.
Sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. So I guess my first question is I have participated in the Top Shots and it's pretty awesome. I hear you loud and clear. The fiat on railing part is really awesome. Having a crypto, I've bought Top Shots, both fiat and crypto. However, on the back end, it's kind of cumbersome because as a customer, if I wanted to sell and move my money, I have to wait like a long time. Whereas in a lot of other crypto platforms, like the participant owns custody of the token of the NFT. And, when they buy it, it sits in their wallet and they own it, not on a quote unquote exchange. So I'm curious on other ventures with Flow, is it going to be set up more like Top Shots where it sits on your platform, your exchange, and then customers or participants kind of go through a process to move the NFT? So that's my first question. And then I had one more. The second question is the other frustrating part with Top Shots. And I know it's a two-edged sword, but it's so popular that a lot of people can't get moments impacts. Like the last few drops, I've gone in the lottery and just come up short. Like I'm not able to even get a pack. I know that's probably a good problem to have in some ways, especially for Flow or the NBA. But for fans, it could be really, really frustrating. So those are my two main questions. Thank you.
So on the drops front, there is always going to be some kind of supply and demand constraint, and that's good for the marketplace. So anyone who's participating in the marketplace should be happy that we're not flooding the market with too much stuff. On the question of the custody, I think that's a little bit of a fundamental misunderstanding. The wallet that sits on top of NBA Top Shot is custodial. You still have custody of the assets inside of that wallet, and you can still, buy new things to put in there, sell the things you have in there. If you're using a platform that allows credit card payments that does not have some kind of fraud protection on it, I highly recommend not using that platform because it puts your own money in danger. Part of the reason that there are wait periods for withdrawals on NBA Top Shot, and I think there will be some kind of wait period for withdrawal in any kind of service. I think as the space gets more mature and there are more purchasers, I think part of the benefit of things like Dapper Wallet is you'll bring your identity verification between projects. So if you, went through identity verification, or as kind of is commonly called KYC, if you go through identity verification, you get withdrawal permission on NBA Top Shot. I don't see any reason why, once we launch the UFC product, you'd need to re-KYC. You've already KYC'd into the wallet. And so I think as there's more participation in the space, good actors will be rewarded for being good actors, and bad actors will continue to have problems, because if you do activities that look shady, even if they aren't, let's say you do them accidentally, we can't tell the difference between real shady activity and perceived shady activity. And so the team just has to do some real deep diving into, are you who you say you are? Did you do shady stuff? Or was that actually just behavior that you were doing that wasn't actually shady? And so I wouldn't use my credit card on a platform that didn't have some kind of fraud protection. You don't do that on the internet at large. I'm not going to do that in a blockchain space because the fraud risk is too high. But it does create some of that bottleneck in these very early days that I think we'll see resolved. It does suck, right? It's really frustrating. And it feels like, I think that for people who have been within the withdrawal process for a long time, of which there are actually not that many, it feels bad. And we feel bad that it feels bad. But I think fraud protection is extremely important to us. It's extremely important to brands, and it's part of the reason that they come to us. So I would expect to continue to have to verify and to continue to have a wait time for withdrawals for at least the first time that they happen. And then I think, again, as the marketplace matures and as the tools mature, this market really has only existed for call it 6 months, and 3 of those months it wasn't even big. And so we're just, you guys are all extreme early adopters, and I think you're feeling some of the pains that early adopters feel when a market is still maturing.
I appreciate you clarifying that, because I'm just I've never tried to withdraw money, but I am on the Discord chats, and I've read other people's kind of grumblings, and I'm like, oh, I haven't done it, but I guess no one can withdraw money. But the way you just explained it is pretty clear. So then if I have KYC and I'm cleared, and I do think it is important to have KYC because it helps things be legit, right? It helps everything be. They're already going to have levels of regulation on crypto brands and stuff. So having KYC, I think, is a good thing. But so if I am shown to be legit, then I shouldn't have a problem when I want to move my asset or move money, right?
I don't think that you should have to worry about it.
Cool. Thank you.
For sure. Wait, do you have your hand raised? I feel like this is the community
Indeed.
time.
Well, I just wanted to add additional color to Jeffrey, what you mentioned, also Caty, her answer. I work primarily on the Flow ecosystem side. So on that front, I think like people misunderstand often because of the success of NBA Top Shot, which the team deserves all the kudos for that. Is like that mistake, like what NBA Top Shot is, and the implementation that had decided the path to go down with what Flow ecosystem or the blockchain means, right? Like NBA Top Shot is one of the many apps running on top of Flow, and they have certain design, security, and also like KYC because of the fiat on-ramp. But that does not mean like that's the only model that's going to work on Flow, right? You have seen like, Vibe Marketplace that have implemented a hybrid system. You have seen like, MotoGP that actually did the, initial drop on via credit card, but actually users receive the moments on their blocked wallet, which means, they actually own the asset and they can move around or list on other exchanges, right? Like on Marketplace. And then, you will see many more, different ways of iteration along the way. So for all the builders out there, anyone interested in being on top of Flow, that is one model, but it's not the only way, right? And that's why we are here, like, sharing our opinions, experience, so that you can, learn from NBA Top Shot, learn from other marketplaces, and then maybe build even a better solution or like, hybrid way that can address, both the interest, protection of users, and also like, the overall Flow user experience that you think, could be the best for your audience. So just wanted to, add a minor clarification on that front.
Take another question.
Great. Michael Ray, I think you have your hand raised next.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for putting this together. I'm a big fan of Top Shot. When I started playing around with it, music was kind of the first place my mind went to as a potential other use case for a blockchain like Flow. I have two questions. The first is, you brought up some of the challenges in publishing music on NFTs from a licensing perspective. And I believe I recall the Flow team had talked about some sort of a partnership with a big record company, maybe Universal or someone like that. And I was just curious if there was any conversations with a large music label, if you could elaborate a little bit about what kinds of things those companies are comfortable with and maybe not comfortable with in terms of publishing licensed music as digital artifacts or tokens. And then my second question is just from like a business perspective, in terms of engaging with the Flow team, when is a good time to start that conversation from like a product perspective? So is a concept, is a prototype enough, or do you need to be operating, some kind of a revenue generating business on another blockchain like Ethereum to prove the business case first? Yeah, that's my question.
I'm going to answer those in reverse. So you definitely don't need to have a business model to start building on Flow. And I think the resources that are in this slide deck you can use. Again, the Discord is great because Wei is in there, Negan's in there. We have multiple engineers in there. Like, you can ask questions along the way as you build. You can like have a lot of access to our team in that way. So you don't. The only reason I bring up business models in this kind of presentation is because I think sometimes when y'all are building, you're very much thinking about how the product can work and not necessarily how the company can work, and how you can, in some cases, quit your day job and make this your day job. And we'd love to see you all quit your day jobs and make this your day job if it's not already. And so it's not about like we're gating access to successful companies at all. Quite the opposite. We'd love to see small teams come in. And, when we built CryptoKitties, we were a team of, 3, 4, 5 people at first who we had day jobs and we're working on it, alongside that. And so we think some of the greatest ideas are going to come out of small teams that can move really nimbly and build things much faster than those big teams and be really disruptive. So that's great. Please do that. From the perspective of audio, I always bring up audio as difficult because it's been difficult for us, where basically every idea that we've had in the space that includes audio on chain has been shot down. And so rather than have y'all build your like business models around audio on chain, I always just like disclaim it's hard. It's going to be hard to get permission. One of the things that we've found, and we've done a couple of different things. So we did some CryptoKitties with the band Muse, and we've done some pitches to do custom work in the past around music before we got so deep into sports. And one of the things I found is that the areas you can play are the ones that are least well defined. And so digital rights are not as well defined as the audio rights, because the record label's sole focus is audio. And then they built all of these businesses around the audio business that include other things. Blockchain collectibles are not in anyone's contract. Maybe starting, 2 years ago when Warner Music invested in us, they started maybe putting those into contracts, but those are kind of the Wild West. And so there's a lot of room to play in that respect. There's a lot of room to play in non-audio assets by recording artists, again, because they're not defined and the ownership doesn't necessarily sit in one place. And in the cases it is defined, it's explicitly defined for commercialization. So it's basically saying you should go commercialize this stuff, which means that's great. You're going to not need a ton of resistance. I'm pretty sure the audio issue is largely with the way that the contracts work with the streaming services that make it really hard to do in like unique audio on chain. I think there's the potential to put existing audio on chain, but like in that case, why do you need that when you can stream it, or you could download it, or do any number of other ways? And so when you're looking for those areas that are interesting and disruptive and give you an opportunity to actually create a product that can be used by many, I think the audio piece is just really hard. That being said, we've seen probably 3 or 4 Ethereum-based startups that I don't think any of them are still around, but we had seen them earlier in the CryptoKitties days, who were trying to figure out the audio on-chain piece. And I think there is something really empowering to artists there, and especially independent artists, to be able to activate with their actual music in the space. It's just going to be really hard for established artists to do, but maybe not forever, right? There's a whole starting January of this year, there's a whole crop of artists who are like, I'm not going to sign those rights away anymore because I think there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for existing licenses and contracts. But yeah, I wonder the same thing if moving forward, this opens up a completely different licensing model, or maybe even throws out the existing licensing models for something completely novel. Thank you. That's really helpful.
For sure. And I will say that even when we went in to talk to the NBA so long ago, and like we talked about all of these different use cases, we were like, if you try to start with the use case of putting your ticketing on chain, it'll be 5 years before you launch anything. Like 5 years at a minimum, because you're talking about yanking out a system that works. It doesn't work perfectly, but it's a working system that you make a lot of revenue through. And so to yank that out and try something new is extremely scary. Whereas wading into different territories and then being like, well, let's try a little of this, that can get people a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Danny, I think you had your hand raised next.
Yes, thank you. I had a question. I'm not actually a developer. I'm a music person. And thank you for this talk, because it's really interesting to get more of an insight and more of an interactive insight onto this technology. The question I had was just about, Michael was just talking about music rights and the complexity there, and it is a complex space. But one of the really interesting areas that strikes me is how NFTs as smart contracts can have kind of different layers to them that can potentially interact with those rights. And I was just wondering if that's something you could kind of talk about in a little bit more detail. I realize it's slightly open-ended, but I'm just interested in how that has been sort of something that you guys have been looking at and dealing with, and what kind of experiences you can share.
Do you mean licensing music through a smart contract, like handling your?
Well, I mean, kind of embedding within those assets potentially rights and interests in the ongoing licensing or value of that asset.
So you're asking about how can you give permissions within a smart contract for people to commercialize an asset?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as directly as that. I'm just interested in terms of what capacity there is within the technology to enable these kind of inbuilt shares of interest, for example, or ways that it can trigger future, whether it be financial or other kinds of participation. Does that make sense?
Sort of. It's a lot of different. It sounds like you're asking a lot of different things, which is why I was trying to clarify, because there's
probably am. My understanding developing as I go.
So there's an area of a fertile area that is around digital licensing through smart contracts, which is interesting, right? So I permission anyone to use my piece of music. If you use it, you have to pay to use it, and you pay through a smart contract, and everything gets governed through that. And that's an interesting use case for sure. That I think that can be done today. That's just kind of like building a smart contract. I don't know if anybody's done a lot of it before, so I can't speak to what's been done in this space already, but that's certainly an area of interest. Fractional ownership is another area of interest. I haven't really seen any executions that the item is meant to be fractionally owned, but I could be wrong. I think in most cases that we see right now, there's an item and then there's a smart contract that governs the fractional ownership of a single item. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't create fractional ownership in a single item in a smart contract. Again, somebody who is much smarter at tech than I am is going to need to answer that question. And then there's the question of commercialization permissions, and that isn't necessarily in a smart contract. It could be in a smart contract, but for us, our smart contract points back to a website that has a terms and services that we change sometimes, and we have to be able to change that, right? The world changes, and the way that you can use that asset needs to sometimes change. If a completely new technology arises, we need to make sure that, for example, NBA Top Shots, you own it, you 100% own it, but you don't have the right to commercialize the NBA's IP in the same way that I can't go and print off 20 t-shirts because I own a t-shirt with a graphic on it. It's that kind of structure. But in almost every case that I've seen, NFTs point to terms of service that live outside of that NFT so that they can be very clear about that information. And sometimes legalese is weird, right? Like I've seen emails come in to our hello at Dapper Labs box where it's someone who's being like, hey, I was reading through your terms of service, and I'm like, you were what? But they're doing that. And they find something that actually doesn't make all that much sense. And like in a multi-page legal document, sometimes there's a phrase that doesn't make a ton of sense. And we'll go back to our lawyer and be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. We should update it. And so we don't actually have that in the smart contract. The thing that you own is the smart contract in a Top Shots. You own the thing, but the term by which you're using that thing sits outside of it. But we're extremely explicit that you can't commercialize something that is somebody else's IP in any world. So I think I answered a couple of those questions, but I'm going to...
Sorry, it was a tricky question. It was kind of an invitation to explain some stuff that I'm trying to wrap my head around. But no, thank you. Really interesting. Thank you very much.
I actually am sure there's somebody else on this call who would do a better job of explaining any one of those three things. So look in the chat, introduce yourselves to each other.
Great. And Allison, I think you had your hand raised next.
Yeah, thanks. So we are building a business in music using Flow. And the thing that really drove us to Flow over Ethereum was, the lack of the really high gas fees, which has just become prohibitive for Ethereum. So I was reading your paper that you have on your site, the token economics one, to learn more about the fees. And, you talk about, obviously, the whole blockchain is very different than Ethereum, but it talks about how the transaction fees will be very low at the beginning, but, implies they could go up over time. And it also talks about the minimum balance in Flow accounts. And it says, I'm trying to find this one part, the on-chain storage and associated minimum balance of Flow required for NFTs can be significant since everyone is unique. So I'm kind of just wondering if you think, especially as Flow grows and more things are built on it, that this would be prohibitive to like small startups trying to, not have ridiculously high fees and minimum balances.
I think, first of all, Megan, can you get Allison's email so I can get her an actually intelligent answer? Because I'm about to give like a business person answer.
Yeah,
Which is like,
Allison, send me your email.
slipping and sliding. I think that we purposefully built Flow in a way that can scale so that the fees won't get high and so that we can have more participation. And so like the basic answer is, we don't expect you to ever see the size of fees on Flow that you see on Ethereum today, which are like prohibitive to participating at all and anything that needs to happen in any kind of quickness. But I am 100% not the right person to explain that all the way through, but we do definitely have people on the team who can do a better job. And the fact that you've asked that question tells me our documentation needs to get better to be much more clear about what that looks like, especially down the road. I can tell you for us, we do not have fees as I don't even know if we have fees at all in our P&L for NBA Top Shot. It's almost like a non-factor to us. And we're hoping that we become, 100 million user product. And so we're not too worried about it. So I don't think you should be too worried about it, but somebody can get you a better answer than that.
Okay, thank you.
That was a total non-answer. This is like BD person BS. Thanks.
Yeah, I am not that technical either, so I understand.
Megan, do we have time for maybe one or two
sorry.
more?
I was trying to unmute myself. Blake, I think you were next.
Hello. I was wanting to ask, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you have a partnership with Warner Media, and then you said you weren't developing. What is your vision for that partnership with them, or Warner Music?
So Warner Music is an investor in Dapper Labs, and they're an early supporter of blockchain and specifically NFTs. We did some activations with them early on, and we worked through some concepts with artists of theirs. What we've said is that we think that the larger ecosystem is going to build something really great in this space, and that it's something that they're very interested in, and they're very interested in seeing early and figuring out what platform is doing something that can work for their artists really well. And so their involvement with us is at an investor level. And they've been great advisors too. I mean, they're experts in entertainment, not just music, but the whole Warner family of businesses is so steeped in entertainment. So I think that partnership is more about advisory and investment. I think at some point we thought we would build something really big, but we also thought we would build something really big in multiple verticals. If you came to a presentation that I did 2.5 years ago, I would have been talking about how we have pillars. We have, entertainment as a pillar, and music as a pillar, and sports as a pillar. But I think what we found is that we're good at sports, and we're doing a really good job there. And instead of spreading ourselves too thin, we want to help others in the ecosystem to build really great stuff and be supportive of other builders. And so we don't have plans there. So I said a lot of words to say we don't have a plan to build something.
Thank you.
Great. And I think we have time for another question from Corey. I think you're next.
Yes. How you doing? I have two questions. The first question is, when do you all plan to release NBA Hardcourt? And is this game going to be kind of like a fantasy league game, or is it going to be like a AAA game like NBA 2K? And then the second question, actually that's three questions. The third question is, does Dapper have like an accelerator program for startup founders who are looking to build on Flow and trying to just get more assistance and hands-on assistance with building out a successful DApp on Flow through an accelerator program?
So Hardcourt we're still working on. It's in some user testing now, and so I'm just going to put a pin in all of those conversations until we're ready to share more on it. But on the Flow Builder side, Wade, are you still on? Do you want to jump in on where they can find more information on information about how to get involved?
Yeah, sure. So we have many programs, I guess, in the planning, but the current one already on our website is called FEED, Flow Early Adopter Track. Yeah, you can go there, learn about what it entails, and also submit any idea you might have, for sure. And as usual, we always suggest people to join Discord because our teams actively, engaging them daily. So we actually do see all your ideas are being shared there. So that's the second best place.
Okay.
Is the accelerator on flow.org/FEAT? If it's not, we should definitely do a redirect.
Yes, accelerator is actually part of that extension in the sense like we don't have a clear cut of between, like said, the early adopter and accelerator. In short, it's like any promising project that has good traction and a strong understanding of the community building have a good chance to be selected with investment support. So we have more like, I guess, less defined line between feed and accelerator that's at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. And I think we can maybe have room to squeeze in one more question from, and I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Malin.
Yep, you nailed it. Thanks for hosting this. My question is, I think you touched on it a bit in one of the other questions in the presentation as well, but specifically as it relates to like the royalties of a song, which, either the artist, if they're lucky enough to own it, or the label might own it as well. I'm curious what you think some of the challenges are with linking an NFT or a smart contract to those royalties specifically. So the underlying, owner, so let's say a fan in that case, would be able to, get portions of a song as and when that song is released.
I guess instead of answering that, I'll ask you a question back of what does it benefit an artist to do that? Like to put to give fractional ownership to a consumer, just that they're creating an opportunity. Like, to me, engaging consumers and, developing fandom isn't about money. And like the things that make me cringe the most when I see them about Top Shot are all of the big sales, because to me, the collecting is the thing. And the reason that I love the product is because I love my collection. And so I guess there's for sure a benefit to the consumer for being able to make revenue off of that track. But what is the benefit to the artist? Like, the benefit has to be a two-way street.
Well, it's a great point. I think for me, in my mind, there's kind of two. One would be as a fan, as an artist, you're giving away, let's say 10% of the song. It's somewhat of a nominal amount to you. You own the other 90, hopefully. But it's a creative way to drive engagement with your fan base and like have them sort of be even more invested in that piece of art than they already are. And the second would be as an emerging artist, early days, if you're looking to raise money, instead of having to sign a label deal, you could sort of crowdsource equity into the future royalties of a song that hasn't even been released yet. It's sort of a creative way to maintain ownership of your masters.
I think that's interesting. I think the emerging artist piece is interesting because I don't think recording artists keep 90% anything once they're established. Right. And so you're talking about fractions of fractions. But for emerging artists, I think that is interesting. I wonder if that kind of structure is much more complex than actually selling shares in an album or in a track, and that's different than trying to set up a complex smart contract that's going to pay out to multiple places. Rather, it would be like receiving dividends, which may be just a cleaner way to do the same thing that you're talking about. But it is interesting, and thanks for sharing more context around that. As a fundraiser for emerging artists, I've seen less of this in the music space, but I've seen actually a fair amount of this in the athlete space, where young athletes, or especially Olympians in sports that are not necessarily as popular, will do fundraising efforts where, you know, you kind of almost have fractional ownership over their winnings if they win, because that's how how they get paid, and they get bonus. So you almost underwrite it before the thing happens. So I think that is interesting. I haven't seen it written into a smart contract, though. I've only seen it as creating shares that have ownership, that create fractional ownership of the thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, right? It just means that it's the point at human creativity we've gotten to.
For sure. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, I have to jump now, but this was really interesting and fun. So thank you so much, everyone who asked questions. If you had questions that you didn't get answered, Wei, do you want people to go over to Discord and just add questions, and we'll shoot out answers there as well if there's other stuff. And then this presentation will be shared later.
Yes. Again, yeah, please join us on Discord to share, any question you might have that we didn't have the chance to answer. And also, if you're looking for developers or teams to want to join, we have a dedicated channel on Discord too for that. So thank you everyone again for joining us.
Is that discord.gg/flow or /flow blockchain?
Discord.gg/flow, correct.